As a homesteader, an average citizen, a mother, a grandmother, aunt, wife, and farm gal, I find recent news unsettling. Maybe you are also. Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going to dig through some of the falsehoods, narratives, and truth through the lens of Scripture as I try to find common ground and my footing again. Welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch Homestead Happenings. I'm Susan, your hostess. Welcome in Misha Lee and THCR Susan. If y'all would do me a favor and hit those thumbs up, go share this out. We are 2 away from our 3K subscribers. I'm really excited about that, and hopefully we'll be doing something with that on our next live stream. So I've got my notes, and we're going to be doing a lot of reading, but today is really jam-packed with recent news about the Cavovo, Dr. AF, the congressional hearing, and much more. So grab a beverage. I've got my big bowl of popcorn. So if you want some popcorn, here it is. And let's dig in to today's episode. I am videoing on my cell phone today. My computer didn't really want to cooperate until the last minute. I do have it up in case something happens. I can switch over to my computer for the rest of the stream if needed. We're going to start with the King James Version. Excuse me. Scripture. I do have a big cup of tea. I'm still getting over that sinus, bronchitis, asthma crud. And I'm on the last day of the prednisone, so I'm over here in a full hot sweat. So we're going to start out with Proverbs 3:5-7. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. We need to filter everything through God's word, and we need to trust his understanding, not ours. Unfortunately, many people depended upon their own understanding and trust in the government at the time of Cavovo, and there was tragedy everywhere. We were misled and so many other things, and it was just heartbreaking to watch. I was one of the unvaxxed, and I was one of the ones that didn't believe all the hype, although I did come down with Cavovo pneumonia during that. So with that said, I'm going to move on to our next scripture, and that is Proverbs 2:6. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. It is not our knowledge and our understanding that we need to depend upon. It is his and his alone. And the reason I brought that scripture up was because we need to have wisdom to navigate today's world more than ever. James 3:15-17 says, this wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. Let me finish that scripture out as I turn the page. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. There was 4 types of wisdom mentioned in this book of James, in this chapter and verses. The first one is earthly wisdom. It is based upon human common sense and physical existence on earth. Sensual wisdom is driven by natural human desires, emotions, or academic intelligence without the Spirit of God. Devilish wisdom. It is rooted in pride, selfishness, and satanic or wicked intent. And then the wisdom from above, which is God's wisdom, is pure, peace loving, merciful, and coming straight from God. I'm going to stop for a moment while we're waiting for people to come on in. And we're going to do our member shout outs that we usually do on all of our lives. So give me just a moment. I hope everyone is doing okay. So first of all, I want to thank all of our channel members, whether you're a paid member or a gifted membership. You really do support our channel, and we are extremely honored to have you be a member of our channel. So Triple Threat Firearm and Dispense, that's Miss Tarsha. Different Styles, Simply Jan, Homestead, Life in the Piedmont. And I don't have all the rest of them. When you know, I messed up. So anyway, we do have a list, but I messed up and I grabbed the wrong card. But I will be putting out a list of channel members and channel friends sometime during the rest of this week. I am behind schedule because of being sick. There are 3 levels to my channel membership, starting out at just 99 cents a month. You can cancel at any time. Gifted members are gifted randomly through YouTube, and I have no control over who gets selected with that. And you can enjoy the perks of becoming a channel member if you so desire. My bad. I'm probably going to be coughing throughout this. The tea is to kind of help calm that down, but we're hoping that we can get through this without a whole lot of coughing and other problems. And I'm hoping that you're hearing me clearly, because my cell phone is a little distance from me, and I'm trying to talk loud so that you can hear me. As I stated before, I am an unvaxxed person. I had reactions to a flu vaccine not too long ago, before COVID started. Hello, Milk and Honey Heritage Farms. Welcome in. So I couldn't take vaccines, and I'm glad that that happened. And, you know, the Lord does things in mysterious ways, and we don't always understand why things happen. And up until that point, I believed in vaccinations. I raised my kids. I was vaccinated as a child. My children were vaccinated as children. And I've watched my youngest grandson as a baby get like 72 vaccinations before his first year. And I was just in shock that my daughter was actually going along with that. A lot of those had to do with the Cavovo. So something happened along the way with the vaccinations. So we'll get into that in a moment too. In 2022, right after I had started my channel, I had Cavovo pneumonia, and I was hospitalized and given 4 doses of remdesivir in the hospital, but I had refused to sign the hospital waiver for any damages that it may cause. I was abruptly released from the hospital before the 5th dose was administered. I came home with a healthcare team, oxygen, and damaged heart valves. I was not told why I was released or about the damaged heart valves from the hospital. During that time, I also had a lupus rash in a very uncomfortable spot, and I had to go see a wound care doctor. And I had a partially collapsed lung from when I had to have an IVC filter put in to stop blood clots, and it collapsed part of my lung. They didn't tell me that in the hospital either until years later when they were doing an x-ray, and one of the x-ray technicians asked me if I knew I had a partially collapsed lung, and I told her no. Well, during the oxygen therapy that I received, that part of the lung opened up and it had been closed for about 10 years or more. And it opened up completely, and my oxygen went from the mid to upper 80s to 100%. And that it was a miracle from God. So everything happens for a reason, and I do believe that as well. Most of the information I have gathered is from X. I do try to pick sources that are reliable, and I don't try to give you false information, although there's a lot of false information still going around out there in the internet. So just be aware of that. But remdesivir, according to Dr. David E. Martin, remdesivir was declared too deadly and unethical to use in Africa Ebola trials because it had a 53% kill rate. And this drug was the only drug allowed by Dr. AF to be used in hospitals for Cavovo. And I think that that was just a awful, awful thing that he has done, not only to the American people, but to the world, with his unreasonable, almost sickening, I don't know how to put this. He purposely used a drug that he knew had a 53% kill rate on people with Cavovo. It was the only drug that he allowed in hospitals. Nurses called it, "Run, death is near." We had a friend, and I've talked about him before. He was almost 90 years old. His name was Mr. Williams. 2 weeks before he developed Cavovo, he was up on a 12-foot ladder picking his green beans that him and his wife received 75 years prior to for their wedding. It was a wedding gift. And he had been planting those every year and was in perfect health up until that point. Didn't even take blood pressure medicine, didn't have sugar problems, none of that stuff. He had Cavovo. His family talked him into going to the hospital. They gave him remdesivir, and he died in the hospital with a massive heart attack. And we lost a really blessed person in our church. So yes, this had a high kill rate, and I actually knew someone that died from this. Remdesivir kills the kidney function. It was combined in many cases with ventilators. Y'all remember when the ventilators came out? And patients developed pulmonary edema, causing their lungs to fill with fluid, and they drowned to death. Let that sink in. Remdesivir kills the liver and causes multiple organs to shut down. In my case, it had damaged my heart valves, and that doctor that was in the hospital, and I believe he was from Africa, knew that I would sue the hospital, or my family would sue the hospital and him if anything happened to me, and they abruptly stopped that drug. I had enough common sense to go to a heart doctor and told him that I had been in the hospital and what had happened, and that I wasn't feeling my best. And they sent me home with a heart monitor, and then they told me, after they did some other tests, that I had heart valve issues, and it was most likely caused from this remdesivir. So it kills the kidney function, it kills the liver, it causes multiple organs to shut down. In the halted Ebola trial, remdesivir mortality was between 53% and 85% mortality with those with a high viral load. In other words, they were already very, very sick. And so this was just the button to make sure that they were finished off. It almost reminds me of some of the things that Nazi Germany did, the awful atrocities that happened during that. It causes permanent kidney damage in patients. It triggered fatal heart arrhythmias, cardiac arrest, and bradycardia, caused severe hepatocyte liver damage, and was tested on infants as long as they weighed 3 pounds, and it was given to 58 infants in 10 days. This man is sick, to say the least, and all the people that was involved in this are sick individuals, and I really hope and pray that they will be tried and charged to the fullest extent of the law. Whether it happens or not, we don't know. It's upsetting because, like most of us, we want to trust our medical professionals. I lost almost all the trust in doctors and hospitals and medical community during that time. And I still struggle to make myself go to a doctor when I need one, like I did here recently. Hello, Alfonso. Welcome in. Thank you. I am having a blessed day. I hope you are too. You're an amazing friend. So, I don't know about y'all, but I don't trust the medical community. I really don't. It is just frightening to think of what all they have done to us. People were forced to take the Cavovo jabs in order to keep their jobs. Yes, Milk and Honey, Heather, it is crazy how many of them do things to other humans. That's wonderful that you're out and able to go walking, Alfonso. All I have left really is the cough, and occasionally I'll have an asthma attack. It is the bronchitis, unfortunately. And this is a superbug, and that's why my husband and I put ourselves in self-quarantine. And I did find out that several people within our churches had it, and others are getting it. And, it is spreadable. And if you start out sneezing and you think it's just allergies, just take precautions because it is highly contagious. Okay, in Matthew 24:24, this is Jesus speaking. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Hello, Miss Stephanie. Welcome in. Welcome in. Thank you for the prayers. I appreciate that. And Alfonso. Yeah. Oh, wow. Alfonso. That's awful. So I do feel that we were deceived. I do feel that many Christians were deceived. And the whole world was deceived on this one. And he was the voice. Everybody trusted him. And, I don't put much trust in people. I really don't. You have to prove you're trustworthy for me to, believe that you are who you say you are anymore because of people like this. Hello, Christy Betts. I can't even talk today. So for 50 years, Dr. AF was the voice of reason in the NIH, or so we thought. But it was smoke and mirrors, in my humble opinion. I just, I have to shake my head because we all fell for it in some way or another. And we all walked through this, pandemic. I'm going to say pandemic because it was planned. All of the conspiracy theorists were right, and all of the news medias were giving the false narratives. Exactly. Looks like a rat, must be a rat. One thing said to the public, and another in his federal diary that was recently disclosed. His diary had revealed just how evil his intent was, how far he was willing to go, and yes, many of the things he did sickens me to the core. Many of the things he did were indeed satanic in nature, and he was playing God. He even came out and said, I am the science of playing God. Senator Rand Paul released over 1,100 pages of Dr. AF's private COVID-19 diary entries, highlighting early virus origin debates. Wuhan lab destroyed the ability to use hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, which was existing therapeutic drugs that would have cured most of the 1 million Americans and 15 million around the world that died from complications to COVID. Sadly, our FDA covered it up. There goes the government right down the drain. Yep, the blind leading the blind. Absolutely, Christy. I don't like doing these kind of lives, but I just really felt like this needed to be discussed from a homestead farm gal and give you my points of view, and y'all take it and do whatever you want to do with it after that. All of these reports that I'm giving you, the little pieces and clips, are all on X, on my X page, and I'm going to try to transfer some of them over to my Telegram page if you want to go and look at the actual reports. It is very, very sad that we have to do this way. Families broke up over this. I would have never gone to the hospital, but my children begged me to go. And it might have been my death, but God turned it around. There's a reason for everything. Yes, Stephanie, I agree. The government has always been down the drain. Absolutely. And it came from both sides. Just like human beings, there's good and bad in all of us. Okay, y'all get ready to buckle up, Buttercup, because here it comes. There was polio, AIDS, and a host of other diseases, all most likely created in labs to decrease the population, and all under Dr. AF's watch. Now, there are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of immunizations given to babies and children, and I did tell you that we used to not get, and we don't really need. And this is just the cap of the snow-covered mountain of evidence against this man's power. After all, he was playing God with a small g with all of our lives. The power of the elitist. And did you know that his wife was over him? That's who did the checks and balances, just in case you didn't know. In the Senate hearings, Dr. AF invoked the Fifth Amendment 111 times. Some of the things he was accused of during the hearing was the use of aborted and stillborn baby parts. It only gets worse. He was pardoned under number 46. A presidential pardon generally eliminates the legal right to plead the Fifth Amendment regarding pardoned federal acts. And whether that pardon was actually a pardon or not still remains to be seen because it was done with an auto pen. Milk and honey. Oh, I keep calling you milk and honey. Heather, yes, I do. I do think there is going to be other pandemics or plandemics. I know that this infection that I have is a superbug, most likely created in a lab to cause lung issues. Because legal jeopardy for those crimes has been removed, the fact that he invoked the Fifth Amendment in the congressional hearing can lead to contempt of Congress. If the chairman overrules, which he did, the Fifth Amendment claim, the Fifth Amendment claim, Congress can vote to hold the individual in contempt, which carries criminal penalties. Exactly. Why we garden? Absolutely. When Congress bypasses the vote and turns individuals over to the DOJ, the action is classified as an informal criminal referral, but there is no statutory obligation for the DOJ to act. And you can look up the information yourselves to see how this might play out. And from what I understand, they are going to vote on this tomorrow. So y'all be in deep prayer that he gets this criminal penalty brought against him. The smoking pew pew, of course, is Dr. AF's federal server diary. Why he put it on the federal server is beyond me. It was kind of a stupid thing to do, but again, he had that little God complex that he was untouchable. And y'all know that number 46 went back to, I think, 2011 through 2025 or whatever year it was, to cover all those years. And it doesn't cover all the years prior to that he's done all these things. So maybe they can get him on something else. I don't know. But the good news is there are states that are actually starting to do an investigation into criminal charges against this doctor. I agree, Stephanie. A lot of stuff are created in top secret labs at White Sand Missile Range. I have some images. Oh, wow. So 2 Timothy 3, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but it tells us that men shall be lovers of their own selves, kind of sounds like AF. Covetous, boasters, he was very proud, blasphemers, disobedient, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, traitors, corrupt minds. Are we living in this time now? I do believe we are. I do believe that we have reached that point in biblical prophecy that we are living in that. I'm going to go over a few other areas that have hit the news. We'll get back to all this Kabobo mess, but I wanted to share a few things with you. We have 7 states, and I don't know if any of y'all are under any of these, that their water supply was attacked, and up to 12 additional states may have been targeted by hackers, and that came from ABC News. Let them come, Christy, let them come. I might lead them to Jesus. We are in an oil crisis as the battle with Iran continues, even though the news is not telling you that it is an oil crisis. And it will continue until Iran submits to, number 47's demands. We're seeing surging inflation in grocery stores and goods across our nation. That's not including rent hikes and all kinds of other things that are going on. While our minimum wage has not been raised. All of these things are troubling, and we are all feeling the pinch in the pocketbook. Yeah, we're feeling that pinch here on the homestead. I was shocked when we paid $10 for a chicken to make chicken and dumplings a couple of weeks ago. While we were really sick, we were doing a lot of soup. And I asked my husband, go to the store, you know, and get us a chicken. And he did. Here's what it comes down to. What we can't control and what we can control. We can't control others' actions. I've told my kids this. I've told many, many people this over the years. You can only control yourself. We can't control the world stage. Things will happen. I wouldn't do it, Alfonso. They're trying to stop fishing and hunting in Oregon. Yeah, they came out with that deer disease. I can't remember the name of it here not too long ago. It was supposed to be affecting the deer brain, and they test the deer every year here, and I'm waiting for them to do that. And I'm going to get into something that happened over in Russia the year I was born that kind of goes along with that. Um, but yeah, they are trying to control everything. Okay, Alfonso, that'll be great. Okay, but we can control ourselves, our homes, and protect our resources at home. So if you own land, you can hunt in most states on your land without a hunting license. So that's an encouragement. They can't control your land yet. We must not become discouraged. And I'm going to go to facts. And again, I'm going to tell you to go to my X account. If you're interested in any of this information that I'm giving you, these facts that I'm giving you, it is confirmed that Covovax vaccination caused turbo cancers, and that's Dr. Sucharit Hadiki. I'm hoping I'm saying their name right. And this is strictly from Pfizer data, and this was really shocking to me. 487% spike in breast cancer, 369% spike in testicular cancer, 2,181% spike in hypertension, 680% in MS, that's multiple sclerosis, 551% of Guillain-Barré syndrome, 468% of pulmonary embolism, that's blood clots, y'all, 302% in tachycardia, which I do have tachycardia, but I had it prior to, and my tachycardia was brought on by a drug, a medicine for arthritis that I was given. 452% in migraines, 471% in female infertility, 437% in ovarian dysfunction, 269% in myocardial infarction, and 291% in Bell's palsy. This is from their data from their jab. During Cavovo, and I'm not going to mention everything that happened, but our rights were stripped away by the government lockdown. Churches were closed, but yet the liquor store was allowed to stay open. It cost jobs with the military and private sectors, nurses, doctors, you name it, lost jobs because they refused to take the jab or they were telling the truth and they didn't want the truth to get out. Oh, wow, Heather, I didn't know that. Do you have an IBC filter? Yeah, Christy, I wouldn't go because they want to give you biologics and you don't know what's in them. They don't tell you anything. And most of it is um, trials. They'll tell you, we're going to get you on this trial. Well, the trial means that they haven't used the drug before. And you could have reactions to it. I agree. There are things you can do for the arthritis. I am taking diclofenac. You can talk to your doctor about that. There are, things like that that will ease up the arthritis pain. Uh, but rheumatologists cover a host of diseases like lupus and so many others. And although they did send me into remission, I think they gave me hydroxychloroquine for the lupus. I think that was the one I took. But now I have to go get my eyes checked periodically because it can cause blindness. Okay, you refused to be on blood thinner, and they decided that was okay not to be on it. For the blood thinner that I take, because I have a fast clotting disorder, I take serapeptase. You can message me and I'll get you a link if you're interested in that. And it does thin my blood. It is all natural. It's an enzyme. And I take it 5 days a week and then I'm off 2. So that way I can keep my blood thin, because I would be one of those that would have to be on the rat poison for the rest of my life because of the high vitamin K in my body. Yeah, I do too, Christy. And that's part of the autoimmune is you start reacting to every drug that they throw at you, especially the antibiotics, because they want you resistant to antibiotics. So they closed schools and our children's education is suffering because of that. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy stuff that's happened. Pfizer executive admitted under oath to Congress that the Cavovo mRNA vax were never tested before the rollout began, and the mRNA changes your DNA, the structure of your DNA. You can look that up. Vitamin E thins the blood. That's good to know. Couldn't take it when my blood wouldn't clot. Yeah. There's a lot of things that I'm finding out about, different foods and stuff that will naturally thin the blood. Cayenne is one of them. Just everything. Okay. Bill Gates is a private citizen, and this one really got me. Was given the highest level in government clearance and played a direct role in shaping America's pandemic response behind closed doors. Senator Rand Paul stated that. RFK Jr. said on national TV that Lyme disease, RSV, AIDS, and probably monkeypox were all gain of function research that came from a lab. Isn't that just dandy? So all of these diseases that we have been dealing with for years and years and years, how many children did we lose to RSV? How many people did we lose to AIDS? How many people have died from monkeypox? All because some fool wants to play God. And let's not forget Dr. Deborah Bricks and AF's wife were all involved, and there was other people involved as well, I'm sure, because it had to go deep. This had to be a deep state plan all along. And, you give too much power to somebody, and this is what happens. Hey, Troy Sutton, welcome in. Tom Fitton, he goes after these government things all the time. I forget the name of his organization, but they do a lot of legal battles for us. He said AF's agency-funded research on cut-up unborn babies and lab rats was true, and it was called BLT. That's Dr. AF's term for what they did. They actually took the scalps and certain body parts of babies up to 5 months of age. Needless to say, it could have been a miscarriage. They took these body parts and they attached it to lab mice and rats to try to humanize them for their research. And they called it a BLT. You know, it kind of reminds me of Pizzagate. Isn't it wonderful to see all the awake people and to know that the unvaxxed were right? Now, I'm not holding anything against anybody that took the jab because that was the only information they had at the time. But thank God that he gave me enough wisdom to know not to do that and a reason not to. Rand Paul said AF knew Cavovo came from a lab, funded the gain-of-function research, directed officials to delete incriminating evidence, knew masks were ineffective. He also knew that mask causes you to breathe in the same germs over and over again. He lied under oath, and he declared, I am the science. This man was just wicked, y'all. Just wicked. The CDC planned quarantine camps, and this is July 26, 2020, in a document called Interim Operational Consideration for Implementing the SHIELD Approach to Prevent COVID-19 Infections, and it stayed on their website until March 2023. So yes, they were planning to put people in these concentration camps. Sad, sad, sad. And it does over again. It just reminds me so much of Nazi Germany. You know, we knew that they had these paper caskets that they were bringing in and all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, we were getting all this conspiracy stuff thrown at us, you know, over these years. And it's turning out to be true, true, true. And all the naysayers are sitting there with their mouths hanging open. And, you know, the unvaxxed are sitting here quietly just saying, yeah, I was right. Yeah, your son, okay. Yeah, we have family members that took it. And you know, here's the thing. I knew people in my church. A lot of them were nurses and had to take it. And they're just even a doctor who swore to me that he would never take the jab. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. Held my consultation in open and violated the HIPAA law to embarrass me. And he was an endocrinologist. But their personalities changed immediately once they took that jab. They were so giddy over getting that jab. And it just, you know, told me that there was something not right with this. And I kind of think that's how it's going to be when the Mark of the Beast is finally rolled out. We do know that they're testing this over in some countries where you get the RFID implant in your hand and you go and scan your hand and you go through your line and you get your groceries and you go on out. They were trying to pull that here with all the cameras and the things on the doors, and you couldn't come in the store unless you had a special ID to allow you in the store. And they were trying to push that during COVID. And I do remember that. A matter of fact, General Dollar was one of the stores, and so was Walmart with all these self-checkouts. And that's one of the reasons I don't like doing the self-checkout. First of all, they don't pay me to do it. They're not giving me a discount on my groceries. And they were setting this up for the New World Order. So all of this, to me, is part of that New World Order thing that they were trying to pull. And of course, 15 million people around the world died during Cavovo, and right at a million Americans died during Cavovo. You know, the Bible talks about a third of the population being wiped off the earth a third of the fish dying in the seas. It's just so much in the book of Revelation that's just mind blowing. And we're living through some of this. And I just want y'all to be aware. This is why I get in my Bible and I read it. I want to know all of the facts. And, they recently took away our pennies. A penny saved is a penny earned is no longer viable because we can't have pennies. And pennies are made out of copper, and you can go look up and see what copper does to our bodies. It's just amazing, some of the things that we are witnessing here. The headlines are moving so fast. The world may feel fragile, noisy, and complex. The systems we once trusted, public health, digital infrastructure, global supply chains, are showing deep fractures. It is as if we citizens, and specifically homesteaders that are striving for self-reliance, to step back and reevaluate everything. We need to do that periodically anyway, but we need to step back and we need to reevaluate. What do we trust? What do we not trust? And get away from being dependent upon consumerism, whether it's going to the medical doctors and all that, or going to this grocery store, and become anti-consumerism and start being self-dependent. Our grandparents did it. We can do it. He's been in that office for 50 years. I'm 64. That means 14 years I lived without his influence over everything. And I know a lot of y'all are in the same boat. And then there's some of y'all that have never lived outside of that, outside of his influence over everything. For the average citizen, Dr. A.F. saga highlights a deep erosion in institutional trust. When accountability is mired by legal maneuvers, pardons, and political friction, it signals that the large bureaucratic systems can't be relied upon to self-correct or offer transparent truth during a crisis. That's exactly what happened to us. We can't trust our government any longer with what happened. And I do believe that number 47 is trying to correct some of this. He is just one person. He's not going to be able to do it alone. He's put some wonderful minds in place to help bring some of this stuff to light. And, I know there's people out there that don't like him, but I believe that God's hand has been upon him, and that's why he was fighting so hard and why so many people are trying to out him. There was another thing just yesterday where they tried to off him. Yeah, it does make you sick and angry, and it made me sick and angry, and I did watch some of it, and I just sit there looking at the smirk on his face as he'd pull out his little card, and he would read his little statement that he was pleading the fifth, and he had to do it on every question that they asked. They asked him what color his tie was, and he pled the fifth. And they asked what color the rug was on the floor, and he pled the fifth. And I was just like, you smirky little man. You think you're all that, but you're not. You're nothing. You're just a little worm in the dirt. And that was my opinion of what I was witnessing. As homesteaders, we tend to lean naturally toward preventative health, natural remedies, and personal autonomy over medical choices. Our health is sovereign and a pillar of the homesteader community. When we rely entirely on the centralized, politicized medical establishment, it leaves individuals vulnerable. Hey, I said it right. When protocol overrides patient well-being, and that was the protocol. Remdesivir was a protocol, and hospitals had no choice but to administer it. I want to thank everybody that's still in here. I have no idea how many are in here, but thank you very much for coming along with this. And make sure you're sharing this out with your friends, families, emails, text message somebody if you think this is important information to get out. The water supply breach means that there is no longer a distant theoretical threat. Water is life. When municipal water grids can be remotely targeted, locked out, or forced into manual operations, the vulnerability of centralized living becomes stark. For homesteaders, having an independent off-grid water source like a manual well pump, rainwater catchment, and effective filtration transitions from a nice to have project to an absolute necessity. Yeah, I know a pig farmer, Heather. Economic pressures continue to pinch households as inflation surges, paired with the geopolitical tensions and persistent conflicts involving Iran and proxies that threaten global supply lines and energy cost. Inflation eats away purchasing power. Citizens feel this every time they fill a gas tank or buy feed and seed or go to the grocery store for that matter. You fight inflation and the supply chain by producing more of your own food, storing pantry depths. In other words, make sure those pantries are stocked, and generating energy off grid where you can possibly do that. And I'm using some solar stuff now, and we're going to get, Christy, I think that they're going to vote on that tomorrow, so hopefully they can do that and it'll pass. I noticed that more and more of the Democrats are coming to the table, so that's a good thing. Okay, case in point. In 1962, in Russia, during the Cold War, food items experienced severe state-decreed price hikes, like meat and butter, by 25 to 30%, were simultaneously lowering piece rates, effectively cutting wages for factory workers. In other words, the wages went down and the prices went up. And this was the year that I was born. The Novocherkassk massacre in 1962 happened when food prices hikes proved much more than the population already suffering from chronic shortages. It sparked wildcat strikes and massive worker protests. The workers could no longer afford meat and butter on their current wages. The Soviet regime responded with a brutal force. Troops and tanks were sent in, and protesters, including women and children, were fired upon and resulting in dozens of deaths. The government tightly suppressed the news of the massacre for decades, hiding the true cost of their economic mismanagement. The history underscores the severe danger of centralized economies attempting to balance its failing budgets on the backs of everyday citizens. When a government has too much power, holding a monopoly on food production and distribution, a sudden shift in state pricing, or failure in agricultural policy doesn't just cause financial strain, it turns into a crisis for survival. We watched, go back and read about, the Great Depression and the struggles that our own people went through. Hello, Joanne, or Joan. You changed the name of your channel. I like that. Joan Parker, Cozy Living. A modern parallel with Soviet era food price shocks And our current landscape of America reveals a striking modern parallel. The U.S. operates under a market economy and are experiencing our own systematic squeeze on essentials. Cost of basics, provisions, energy, and groceries are currently outpacing the true purchasing power. All talking points, global chain supplies, cost of petroleum, and recent cyber water attacks are high costs for us to move goods with everyday spikes. Much like the historical warning of work of the workers facing stretched wages against rising costs, the everyday American feels the pinch at the grocery store and gas pump, along with other areas. It creates a financial anxiety, even when employment numbers look stable on paper. You know, oh, everybody's employed. We have a good economy. Blah 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 blah, and yet it looks good on paper, but when you come into the household, like our household, we have one income, really. I get a Social Security check, but it's not much. But we have one income, and it don't go far. You know, we are always one paycheck away from being homeless in America, and most families are in that boat, unfortunately. The Soviet Union lesson versus modern America. In the Soviet Union, the state tried to hide economic reality through artificial price controls, resulting in empty shelves, systematic corruption, and eventual collapses. Didn't we go through that with Kobovo, where we had a toilet paper shortage and some other items disappeared off the shelves and the stores were looking bare? They were trying it here, but they did it in Russia. They've done it in Argentina and other places around the world. And, America is the golden child of the world, and yet America is the most hated nation in the world. But everybody wants to live here. In America, we see different types of a fragile system. The just-in-time logistics. When cyber threats targeting our water or energy grids, when the federal spending and monetary policy drive up the cost of living, we can see how vulnerable a hyper interconnected centralized society really is. On the homestead, we can grow and store our staples, insulate our energy and water, and foster community economics and trade, bartering, and buying locally. So, I used to live in a big city and lived on the water system of that big city, and they put all that chlorine and fluoride in the water, and we're trying to kill all the germs and everything, but yet people were dumping medications into the water. Factories was dumping pollutions into the water, and you can't filter out everything. And we were living like that for years and years and years. Then I moved to upstate New York for 14 years, and we lived on a property that had a well, and we had sulfur in the water. It had sulfur water. Well, if you're allergic to sulfur, you can't drink the water. You can't bathe in it. You can't do anything. And they had a filtration system to kind of filter out that sulfur. Excuse me. But we have to, we had to make adjustments. And then, of course, toothpaste has fluoride in it. And now they're saying fluoride's bad for you, blah, blah, blah. And we grew up with that. And I've got a mouthful of bad teeth because of ankylosing and other things, and can't afford the dentist. Don't really want to go to the dentist because I don't trust the dentist. I had a tooth had to be pulled one time, and it probably didn't need to be pulled, but the dentist insisted that it needed to be pulled, and it liked to kill me. And I haven't trusted a dentist since. I have a cousin-in-law that went to the dentist for a root canal, and they messed up her tongue. She was a teacher. For about 2 years, she couldn't talk. Really messed her up. And really scared me to not want to have a root canal. We can step away from dependency to protecting our households with faith-filled preparedness that honors the stewardship over anxiety. Yeah, I'm having little problems with my internet probably. Today we traveled from the modern headlines, cyber attacks, and our water grid surging inflation and institutional distrust back through the cautionary history of the Soviet food crisis. The common denominator across every era is clear. Over-reliance on fragile centralized systems leaves individuals exposed. We have millions of people in this country that are in centralized systems that are being exposed. We live in the country, we're less exposed, but you know what I'm saying. Looking at the structural cracks in our public health and municipal infrastructure today are the heavy lessons of history where the economic mismanagement squeezed the working class to the breaking point. Our response as a homesteader needs to remain anchored in our faith in God. And my camera went crooked, y'all. I'm sorry. Y'all are looking at me crooked. Our schedule is Monday and Friday, full-length videos. Wednesday podcast, I'll drop at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Our once a month, third Monday live is at 11 a.m. Be on the lookout for interactive videos, community posts, and shorts too. That's my commercial. The dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and that is Alexander Solzhenitsyn who said that. That's a quote. And let me see where we're at. We have come to the end, y'all. I have gone through all of my notes. So here is the deal. Yeah, sulfur can cause terrible burns. I know it's good for kidney infections, but we just have to be careful with everything. Everything in moderation, y'all. If you're living in a big city, think about moving to the country if you can. Not everybody can, unfortunately. Over in Russia, they live in these block apartment buildings that was government funded. A lot of people do in the cities, and all the apartments are exactly the same, and they supply hot water for the majority of the year. I think they turn it off in the summer months, and they supply the heat to the building. The government does that. In the Ukraine, we had a friend from the Ukraine that we met many years ago that stood on bread lines and didn't know if they were going to get a loaf of bread, a chicken, or what, and they had to feed a family of 5 off whatever they got that day. And I'm pretty sure they had little family gardens if they had a space to do it. A lot of them were living in 2 and sometimes 3 families to a common apartment, which meant each family had 1 bedroom. Yeah, Satan is a snarling dog. I agree with you. Well, I didn't chew on my popcorn, but good stuff. Take all of this to heart. Pray about it. Get in your Bible. Read your Bibles. If you're not a Christian, get into the book of John and read about Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, any of those books. And if you're like me, I am a prophecy buff. I've been studying it for years. Know the times that we're living in. We're not promised tomorrow, folks. And we've got enemies out there that want to take us out, like this Dr. AF and his minions. And just remember that evil will exist for a short time, but God is in control. And I know the end of the story because I've read my Bible. Thank you, friends, for coming in and listening with me and listening to me babble on and read through all of this stuff. I appreciate each and every one of you. We will be back on Friday with a special treat with Roscoe. And y'all, I enjoyed making that video, so I hope you'll come back on Friday and watch that. Be blessed and a blessing. Until next time.